Welcome to the 10-Minute Life Lesson Podcast. My name is Jay Cleveland Payne. I train people for improved personal and professional development, offering my assistance to those ready to develop their goals into tangible, focused, and achievable plans of action. And this podcast is one of the tools I use to accomplish my mission. Generally, when the timer hits 9 minutes and 59 seconds on this recording, you'll have a fully developed life lesson that you can take with you and begin to implement immediately. And if this week's lesson has a ring of familiar, then it's probably a reinforcement of a life change you've already started to implement. This podcast falls under the umbrella of my greater personal development efforts, all under the Your Better You brand. For more information on accountability coaching or to gain access to tools, tricks, and life hacks, visit yourbetteryouinfo. Thank you for joining me on this journey today. Now, here is this week's life lesson. Trends are cool to follow in fashion, and trends are cool to follow in entertainment. Trends are cool to follow in all sorts of media. But we follow trends essentially because it's what we do as humans. We are naturally pulled into being around groups and doing group things, whether we think we are total introverts or total hermits or not. And we tend to want to do something that someone else has done. While some people are true trailblazers, there are plenty of people out there who really just want to see that it works the first time and maybe the fourth and 40th time before they give it a shot. And that is why one of the weirdest trends we have, especially seeing it from a point of personal development, where you're supposed to be doing things on a personal level, is the trend we have in following a specific guru or specific guru's plan in doing something that's supposed to make our lives better. One of the most overly hyped things, which is actually a good thing, except the hype gets in the way, is your morning routine. Your morning routine literally and figuratively jumpstarts your day. It is the start to what's going on. And even if you don't have a routine, you have a routine. Just like we say, lack of communication is still communication, just not great communication. Having no routine means you usually have a scattered and fairly inconsistent way of getting your day started, which means your day continues on a mostly scattered and inconsistent way. So obviously having a steady morning routine is a good thing, but assuming you have to follow someone else's routine is not such a great thing. There are too many personal development gurus and expert analysis, or whatever you want to call them, who have a certain pitch, or at least sell you on a certain pitch they do every single day, because they are selling you on a certain pitch they do every single day, myself included. I've gone through plenty of different morning routine types of programs that I use to some extent, but I'm also trying to develop them and make them exciting enough, literally make them sexy enough that you would like to jump into it as well. There are some things I get for being joint in those programs, because a lot of things are looking for input for the things I do, such as for this podcast or for other things, personal development wise or business wise, or just whatever it is it's trying to gather. But some of the things are literally made to be sold to you, and some of the things are created specifically for making a buck, making a living, supporting the person giving them out there. And the only real problem with this is not the fact that someone is trying to sell a program, because a lot of people sell programs. Personal trainer is selling a program to help you get in better shape one-on-one. The biggest problem comes when many people adopt it and many influencers adopt that certain program and start to tout it off as the be-all, end-all of everything, when in actuality, they're probably getting a cut from the sales. And that's not really a problem either, but the issue comes from so many different conflicting and overly complicated morning routines that are made in packages if they are take a pill and magic things happen. So today, and this podcast is not about selling you on a specific routine. Trust me, that will come up later. I'll sell you on pieces of what I do and specific things I have to help you with them many times and at a much later date. But right now, let's go over some of the pieces that I use in my morning routine to make it work out as a fairly good routine. And my routine at the moment isn't quite as steady as it has been for the last months or couple of years. So some things do get missed in the various days based on the craziness in my life at the moment. And when they get missed, trust me, they get missed on the back end. I can never say I necessarily have a perfect morning, but these are some things that are done for me to make sure that my day gets off right and, of course, continues as best as possible until other chaotic pieces fall in line. Let's start with how I actually wake up. And I actually wake up with an alarm that goes off at 4 in the morning. And then I turn the alarm off, and then I go back to sleep. Yes, I set the alarm for 4 o'clock in the morning so that I can wake up naturally around 5 o'clock in the morning. It's something that I figured out when I was doing early morning radio with the fact that number one, you set 2 alarms if you want to make sure you get up because one alarm may fail. And number 2, you set yourself up so you get up extra early if you really want to get a natural way of waking up. Your body will actually naturally wake itself up after about a rhythm of about 50 minutes. This is something I learned lately from a guru on waking up. So what happens when you hit the snooze button is you won't wake up naturally when you're jarred up in 10 minutes. But if you wake up, turn it off, and go back to sleep, essentially, about 50 minutes, an hour later, you'll wake up naturally. This is something that my body does still now to this day, to the point that I basically wake up 5 minutes before the alarm, turn off the alarm, and then snooze naturally for about an hour. So now I have a natural way of waking up and getting myself up so my body knows it's time to get up. My body knows it's time to get started. First thing I do is drink some water. Now, every couple of nights, I'll grab a couple of bottles of water from our cabinet and put it next to bed. I don't mind drinking lukewarm water. In fact, I enjoy it better lukewarm than I do cold. So there's always a couple of bottles near the bed, and every time I clear them out, I bring more bottles. So there's always a few bottles there in case I wake up thirsty in the middle of the night, or most importantly, wake up in the morning ready to get ready. First thing I do is drink a half to a full bottle of water, 16 or 16.7 ounces, however they actually are. But 16 ounces of water, somewhere between 8 and 16 ounces of water as soon as I wake up and start getting ready. And I go ahead and get up. That is one of the most important things about my routine is after my first snooze period, I get up. If there's something really big going on, I need to get up early, I'll get up with that first alarm click and then just kind of move with the day. But since I naturally wake up at 5 o'clock, although it's really artificially waking up at 4 and then at 5, it works out for me. From there, what I probably shouldn't be doing, but what I actually do is I check stats in email, essentially. One of the podcasts that I work on is the Conversations wrap-up show, and that has me going through news stories at the end of the week. And first thing I look for in the morning is what news stories I still have ready to post. And then I go ahead and post some stories ahead so that there's stories being posted. Every 50 minutes, that podcast posts a website link on its social media to different stories so that people can catch up with them. So I'm always every few hours checking in on that. That's one of the things that's kind of bad about the routine is I have to check in on this monster every couple hours just to see where it's going. So the first thing I do is check in on that one, see what stories overnight were interesting and see what stories going forward were cool. It actually helps out in my routine when I was doing news and radio, when I'm still doing news and radio, because when you wake up in the morning, you need to check out, see what stories overnight were pushing and what stories going forward seem like they're going. The big thing about people say about checking out news in the morning is they're waking up to make sure that the world is still there, and if the world is still there, what things may be important to them going forward. If you were around and watching the coverage during September 11 here in the States, you would know that specifically because that was an example of the world seeming like it was on fire at that moment and no one knowing what was going on. But the first thing I do is work. It's check in on some things for that podcast, checking on a few emails for important things that happened because I had to keep up with things that happened overnight and taking care of those things as quickly as possible. From there, I took some quiet time to myself, and that, you might say, should have gone before the work part, but it was just a matter of making sure there was not anything I needed to jump onto as soon as I got up and make a move to. Maybe I need to go to work early because something happened overnight, crashing a system, and I can take the proper time for myself. And I'm not the biggest praying, meditating guy, but it was a time to kind of sit and reflect and work on things. There was a time where I was actually producing a morning journaling program, but that was more like work, obviously. So that wasn't so much relaxing. But I do tend to write down some notes and thoughts on the day going forward and write down some thoughts going backwards that may have kind of flushed themselves out at night while I was dreaming, because sleep sometimes is a great way to flush out those things. From there, my standard fare was to get ready, get up, get showered, get dressed, do whatever I need to do, take one last look at the work stuff that needs to be done, emails, stats, checking those things before I got my daughter off to school. This is Monday through Friday, of course. I'm in charge of getting her to and taking her back from school. So we get there as early as possible because she likes to get out and hang out with her friends, and I like to get to work as early as possible. She gets dropped off, I get to work, I do the rounds, checking in on people, making sure that all their systems are good, all my reporters are well, all the producers are doing fine. And then before I log in the computer, I go make breakfast and start off my morning eating breakfast, of course, at my desk, because that's what I do. That is my morning routine, or at least it was up until a few weeks ago. And it worked. It worked to the best of my ability. And your morning routine will work to the best of your ability. Don't get sucked into someone's big time program and think if you can't do it exactly step by step, you're failing. You don't have to journal for 12 hours at a time. You don't have to do 3 hours of cardio and 2 hours of weights before you get moving. You don't have to drink a gallon of water first thing in the morning. You have to do whatever works out for your routine in your life. And most of that will be dealt with by dealing with the people in your life and the routines that must be taken care of. So take that into account. Your morning routine is a great way to start off the day because it is the literal start of your day. And a great morning routine will get you off to a great start. But a morning routine, whether you have one or not, exists. So work on improving what you're doing right now for your mornings instead of worrying about doing the perfect thing that the gurus are selling you, because they are selling you. Thank you for listening to this week's podcast. Thank you for putting up with a lot of the craziness, as I said in the podcast part, in the actual teaching part. That routine that worked out very well, that allowed me time to properly do these things, is no longer the routine. So a lot of things are being done on the fly, a lot of things being done on equipment that wasn't quite set for things. And sometimes, as I'm recording this one a little behind, as you will, I'm having computer issues with my main computer. So while I'm waiting for it to decide to fix itself out, we're here doing this way on my portable recorder. So thank you for putting up with the audio quality of the content, and sometimes the mismatching of getting it in at the general times I had before. But the most important thing is thank you for listening. This thing works because you've been listening to this thing for about 9 years, believe it or not, even though 4 of those years were in a hole of a hiatus. But for about 9 years, you've been listening to this style of podcast done by me. And I thank you so much for doing that. Check out the website, yourbetteryouinfo, for more information on how maybe I can help you figure out what's to do for your routines in general, morning routines specifically, because that's what we talk about here. I have links for how I can help you out with coaching, and of course, links to and information on this podcast, the 10-Minute Life Lesson Podcast, and Steps to Your Better You, a 90-second version, more or less, 90 seconds to a nice tip you can work on there at the website, yourbetteryouinfo. You can go /podcast, go straight to the podcast for those. Make contact with me directly by going to jclevelandpayne@gmail.com or checking out jclevelandpayne.net. And you can email this program, this show, if you will, the Your Better You Info stuff at yourbetteryouinfo@gmail.com. I'm Jay Cleveland Payne, and thank you so much for being a part of this. Number one, thank you so much for getting up and getting after today, because many people don't get a chance to do that. And if no one tells you this today, make sure you know that I got your back. I got your back. We're going to do this together. You need a hand. You need some support. Think about me and me thinking about you today. I may not know you specifically, may not have actually met you personally, but if you're listening to the podcast or if you're into trying to improve yourself, whether for a professional reason or just for personal reasons, then we are in the same gang. And we got this. We are going to get this, to take care of this together. In the meantime, subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss out on upcoming episodes. They'll come directly into your RSS feed. Share the podcast with other people like-minded, or maybe not so like-minded, who need something and it may resonate with what we're doing here. And be here next week as we produce another episode. Great right now is kind of relative because we're dealing with the growing pains of having some issues, and we all have our issues. But we'll have another episode of great content. May not sound as great as it has before, but we're working on that one as well. And we'll work on that, and we'll work on it together next week with the 10-Minute Life Lesson Podcast from yourbetteryou.info.